I think he tackled onto me because I tackled onto him because I saw that at least whatever he'd done, there was order there out of chaos. And if you had to get order out of a muzzle of a gun, so what? I'd been in the war for 6 years, and so I was accustomed to it. And to see people running about like headless chickens, not knowing what to do next, that's what you needed, was a bit of order.
So he turned you into a group of essentially sort of firefighters.
We got very efficient with him in the short time that I was with him. That so much so that that's all we done. Our job was to get into the cellars once the other gangs had got all the rubble out of the way. It was our job to prise open the doors, and then we used to prise open the doors, go down there, and then this lad, he had another group of men, because you couldn't stop. You couldn't stop in the same place for more than a quarter of an hour because you couldn't breathe. The air was too hot. So he had the gang split up into three. One lot would be clearing the rubble, and then he'd bring them out and give them a rest, go back about 300 or 400 yards, and then send another lot in with the crowbars and stuff to try and get the door open. And then the third lot went in with some sacks or something like that and tried to find out if they could find anything to bring out which would be serve to identify people. They had it all. He had it all off pat. He was a fireman, but obviously he was the governor.
This was amazing. This was your Valentine's Day. This is February the 14th, 1945, and you went to work at that. And there was just a little bit in your essay which I wanted to read back to you. You said, if he was brave and stupid enough to fight what I thought was the impossible, then I, an Englishman, would match him. You really worked your heart out.
Yeah, that's what it is, because he'd shot 2 blokes who refused to go. 3 blokes refused to go back into the fire with him. So he shot 2 of them, and the other bloke, he started running towards us as quick as he could. So he finished up with us. But
you did though find some survivors, didn't you? How did that happen?
Yeah, we did. Yeah, but I wasn't with the general then. He had a day off of doing something else. I don't know what he was doing, but we got lumbered with these 2 SS officers and a young kid who had a machine gun, little Schmeiser, 9mm thing, and they just left us to it, because by that time, the 4th day, we knew the drill, and we found this opening and went down, and then it all collapsed. So we thought. Well, one of them thought that we should try and get through and find out what was at the other end of it, which we did. And we found these 4 women and these 3 children, these 3 young girls. And everybody's dancing about and clapping, and we're all happy, and nobody knew I don't think anybody knew the other person. But you all acted as one, even the guards. That we were so invigorating to find these people after all that work. We never found anybody else. They were the only people we found. It never happened again. It was great because it gives you that feeling that you've done some good.
I want to take you back into the middle of it, because before you went back in, when the heat was at its worst, there was, of course, the wind, wasn't there? Can you tell us about the wind?
Well, the wind really didn't come up until the second raid, because it was the second raid which really set the furnace going to its intensity. And to feed the flames needed oxygen. So all the air that was used up was being drawn up into the sky with anything that wasn't bolted down, including human beings. And so this wind come along at ground level, rushed in, and it just got fiercer and fiercer as from its inception, which must have been about 5 o'clock in the morning, when it really started getting naughty after the second raid had finished, right the way through the second day when the Americans were bombing. And it was just like a tight... Well, you couldn't stand up. If you got within range, you had to hold on to something and hold on tight, because otherwise you'd get dragged into the centre and up into this big black cloud, which was in the centre of Dresden. Right in the centre is like a big black tree trunk. But the tree trunk was about half a mile wide. Or it wasn't wide as that, obviously, but it was certainly wide. It was like these pictures you see of these American storms when this...
Like a tornado, one of these...
Yeah, that's what it was.
Twisters.
And it draws everything up in the sky. Everything that isn't bolted down.
How did you avoid getting drawn into it then?
Well, because this general, he had his head screwed on. He kept us... If you was capable of being drawn into the fire at point A, then at point B, which would be about 300 yards away, or say 250 yards, you were probably perfectly safe. Because that's when the wind started. It wasn't the fact that the wind was coming in at that speed. It was the fact that in the town itself, once you got in amongst what was left of the walls, the wind was channelled. So there was no way you could stand up against that. And anybody caught in it, like there was these women who had got stuck in the middle of this road in the tarmac, and they caught a light. They all caught a light all of a sudden. They just went up in smoke. And then they were pulled out of this tarmac by the wind and sucked in. And I've seen all this. That's what sent me mad. That's what made me... I'd never come in contact with women and children being involved in killing and murder like that. It had all been man against man. And that was the first thing that I knew about total war. And that's what turned my brain on. And to a state now, even now, I only trust people who I know. And they have to go through a bit of soul searching as well. That's what I'm like now.
I'm going to tell people the rest of your story, which is that after this you got away, and instead of going west with the mass of humanity, you went east. You gave yourself up to the Russians. The Russians treated you pretty well, and then in the course of the next year you got home. But this is what you're doing, and you're putting yourself through this at the very late stage of your life. It's very tough for you. Got to ask you again, why are you doing this?
Why
are you writing this? Why are you talking to us now?
There was Bosnia, where I thought, like perhaps in Europe we've learnt our lesson. There was all that murder in Bosnia when the NATO forces were standing still and letting it all carry on, just watching these people kill each other and murder each other. Then I read about this British cruiser outside Benghazi firing off these Tomahawk missiles into Benghazi, and one of them hit a school. But it was good because there was only 10 boys in there and they were killed. It was good because the school generally held about 40 boys. So nobody seemed to be upset about these 10 poor sods who had been killed. About £80,000 for each boy, I think it works out, doesn't it? About £800 a Tomahawk missile. I don't know. And it's still going on. We're still killing each other, and I can't see any justification for it. And there you are. I'm not a pacifist, no way. But killing women and children, aiming missiles into areas like what's happening in Palestine now. These missiles are being fired into areas full of refugees, and nobody's telling them off we're still dealing with them, still buying Nivea cream and stuff like that. And that's why I'm like I am.
You know, there was never a campaign medal for the men of the Bomber Command who took part in the raids.
I've got nothing against the lads who were up in the airplanes.
I was just what I was going to ask you, because they were just like
no,
you,
no.
weren't they?
No,
they were
no,
just
I've got
following
nothing.
orders.
I've got nothing against those lads. They were doing the job, and they were 10 mile up. They probably didn't know. In any case, they didn't know whether they was going to get home or not. Their life was limited to a certain amount of operations. No, it's the people who organised it at the top. Churchill, Attlee, and as you said, as soon as it became common knowledge, everybody tried to distance themselves and blamed it all on the Bomber Harris. And I don't think Bomber Harris was at all keen on that sort of bombing. I know he invented the carpet bombing of towns, but I don't think he was at all impressed by just killing civilians like that. What I've read of the man and his life, he wasn't as cold-hearted as that. But I wouldn't put anything past Churchill. No, I wouldn't put anything past him or any of that lot. The point is, as I see it, is that they committed these atrocities in the name of the British people, and we're lumbered with it. And nobody's really apologised for their actions or asked for forgiveness, as we should do, because we're supposed to be the good guys. That's the way I feel. I can't help it. It's people criticise me. I take a lot of stick over the attitude I take, but I was there, I saw it.
As Victor Gregg, and his essay for Bloomsbury is called Dresden, a survivor's story. He wrote it with Rick Stroud, and it's available as an ebook. And it's short, but utterly gripping.